do have quorum. Actually, we have a full attendance this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and call this evening's meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Florence to order. Remind everybody to unmute your mics. And Miriam, if you don't mind, if you have a chance to speak, just speak into the closest mic to you. This one right here.
Okay.
Yeah. First item on this evening's agenda is approval of the minutes of the February 27th, 2025 meeting. Those minutes were sent to members of the board in ample time to review. Are there any amendments or changes to those minutes? They're being done. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Next item on this evening's agenda is BZA hearing number 2025-04. Request for a variance from the side setback requirement for a swimming pool. Location is 1052 Oak Bend Lane. Tax map number 07510-01-001. Owner of record is Dr. and Mrs. Walter Connor. The applicant is Tara Reeves of Dreamscape Pools. The zoning district is listed as Neighborhood Conservation 10. The board will now hear from city staff.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So this is a request from the variance for setback requirements for a swimming pool at a single-family home at 1052 Oak Bend Lane. So here's an aerial photo. Just to the west is Lake Oakdale. Here's a little bit. It's at the corner of Stratton Drive and Oak Bend Lane. And it is zoned NC 10, Neighborhood Conservation 10. So here is an aerial photo of the property. As you can see, the blue is 100-year floodplain. The white is a 500-year floodplain, which does encompass a good amount of the single-family home. So here is where we get the setbacks for swimming pools. For the side setback, it's 10 feet from water's edge. So tonight the applicants are asking for a variance. They want to put it 7.77 feet from the side property line, resulting in a variance of 2.23 feet. Very precise.
Yes.
So here's the site plan showing that. So this shows the flood zone. This also shows a carport that is attached to the residence. And then at the very bottom is a detached garage. So when you factor in the flood zone, the existing structures, the placement of the house, it is resulting in this variance request for the applicant. Here's some site photos. The top left, you can see the fence that the pool will be behind the fence. It will be shielded from the road in the front and on the side, so it will not be visible from adjacent properties. As you can see, there's the street. It's a pretty good ways off. It kind of has some weird property lines out there. That this area is sort of an access point to a parcel further back, so it really scrunches up the property lines. And then this photo over here on the right is the carport structure. You can sort of see the garage in the background on that top photo. So findings of fact, the placement of a swimming pool in the proposed location should not impact the character of the street, it being behind the fence and its location. The restriction on the pool is most likely to prevent noise or, digging a large hole right next to your neighbor's property, which is why we have this setback into place. But in this instance, there is no adjacent property owner on this side. The footprint of the house and the carport limit the location as well as the floodplain that we showed you earlier. Adherence to the strict terms of the ordinance would mean that the owner would not be able to add this pool to their property. And again, because it's behind the house with a 6-foot tall privacy fence and on the street side property line along Stratton Drive, we feel that the impact would be negligible to adjacent properties. And that does conclude staff's report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for city staff from members of the board? Go, Ms. Lewis.
Okay, can you go back to the picture with the 7.7 with the floodplain
Oh, yes, ma'am.
right there? Okay, so basically you're telling me if they build their pool, it's gonna be directly where the floodplain is at, right? Where it's potential for flooding.
Yes, they are keeping it out of the 500-year floodplain where no permanent structures can be constructed. So where they're proposing the pool, they're missing the carport, the garage, the flood zone, in the house. It's kind of, so it will not be in the floodplain, to answer your question.
Okay. Okay. And where the proposed pool, is that supposed to be that little block at the, right underneath that, where that line is at?
Yes.
Is that supposed to be the proposed pool?
Yes, it's the small rectangle. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then them asking for 7.77, which would be a variance of 2.23 feet.
So the structure itself, the pool, would not be infringing on the 500-year?
Exactly, and this was done by a surveyor to make sure they knew where the property lines were, where the flood zones were. I think initially they were asking for a larger variance, and after the surveyor got involved and they staked everything off, it seems like now they need a much smaller variance than they initially requested.
So they're trying to follow compliance, right?
That's exactly right. They gave us worst case scenario. They went out boots on the ground, and now they just need the 2.23 instead of the 7 feet, I think is what they're initially asking for a variance.
Okay. And then you said the wall acts as a barrier for the noise.
Yeah, we think that the pools having to be 10 feet from other property owners is probably a noise thing, also maybe a structural thing, just, having a hole in your backyard being close to your neighbor's structures.
Right.
So we just wanted to make sure that, 10 feet is a pretty good rule of thumb. But in this case, there is no adjacent home to hear the noise or, have foundation damage,
Yeah.
which is not going to happen, but that's just probably a consideration when they're writing the ordinance.
Derek, did the local neighbors, as well as the posted notes, was there any concerns or neighborly calls?
We didn't get any phone calls or emails to my knowledge. And we have to post signage, so they would have seen the signage, and we sent letters out as well.
Any other questions from members of the board for city staff? All right. All right. Thank you, Derek.
Thank y'all.
The board will now hear from the applicant, Ms. Tara Reeves. Is that you? All right. If you don't mind, step up to the podium and the microphone. It's a quasi-legal hearing, so I'm going to swear you in. Just state your name clearly into the microphone.
My name is Tara Reeves.
All right, Ms. Reeves, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth?
It is the whole truth.
All right, go ahead.
To be honest with you, I thought that we were still requesting the variance to be 3 feet. So I guess I do have a question about where the
Gotcha.
7 point, when the surveyor, so I didn't know, I know that he was looking at it to kind of coincide with what we were doing. And if that was his judgment, that 7.7, we were actually asking for it to be 3 feet from
Okay.
the property line.
Okay.
And here's the thing, and if it ends up being that 7 point, I don't think that he made it, I don't know if there was a reason he specifically put it there, but the homeowners requested to be 3 feet away from the fence. And there, what we would be doing is putting a 6-inch rock bed on that side, on that fence side. There's still 10 feet before, there's still 10 feet there, and then you've got the street side there at Stratton. And they actually have their equipment where where their water will be pumping through is going to be up towards the house, and then they have an actual city drain out in front of their house. So there'll be zero impact to the flood zone back there. Any water drain would be drained to the front to that. So the reason that we were asking for it to be pushed 3 feet away from that property line where their fence is now is so that they would have more room on the structure side if they ever needed to get in and out of there. So it would be easier to take down a fence that's vinyl than it would be a brick structure. So that's what we were asking. I don't know if there was a reason why he put it that way, but the homeowners did request. I think that you have to a 3D, a link to a 3D. I sent it, and Elaine looked it over, and she said that that would probably suffice. It has a 2D and a set of 3D renderings as well, so it shows it 3 feet away, and that's what the homeowner asked for. Again,
Initially, the site plan that was in the staff report we initially presented to Board of Zoning Appeals does ask for, a 7-foot variance, 3
Yep.
feet, which was, sort of a hand sketch. And then we got this from the surveyor, and it was my interpretation from Elaine, creating that PowerPoint presentation that it had changed. That is what
okay.
she told me.
And my latest conversation with the homeowners, it hasn't, so that's what they're actually requesting. I think that the surveyor just kind of placed it there because they were going off of, I don't know what they were going off of, but our drawings are actually to scale, should be to what we're looking to do there. And again, the left to right really doesn't impact the flood zone, and the left to right really, the reason we're asking for it to go to left a little bit more so we would, have to take down a brick structure if we needed to do anything and have access. They would take down just the vinyl fence. So,
Okay, let me ask the city a question, because the floodplain is not necessarily to where the pool is going to affect the floodplain. It's more so if the flood was to rise and goes into the yard, that was the main purpose, right? For the
That's exactly
setbacks,
right. Yeah, so
Okay,
everyone.
If
Right.
that the
I'm
case,
sorry.
okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. So yeah, the 100-year floodplain, every 100 years, this is about where the water gets to. 500 years, this is about where the water gets to, as a good indication. Obviously, we can have larger storms, and they could impact the pool. But where they placed it now, no, they're not in any floodplain
Right.
danger.
With the numbers that we have here on this paper though, right?
Exactly.
Because what she's saying is
Right.
not what we're seeing.
That's exactly right. Even with the change, they're still good.
Yep.
Okay.
Because
Yes,
it would
ma'am.
shift left to right instead of closer to the flood zone. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Does
I
that make
understand
sense?
what
Okay.
you're saying, yes.
Are there any questions for the applicant from members of the board?
I have one question. You said they have an existing drain in the front.
Yes, ma'am.
Is
It's
that
a city storm drain out front. So a lot of times if we have an HOA or any kind of concern that's about where's that water going to go, if there is any water to be released from that pool, where does it go? So instead of it having any, impact on, or in disturbance behind where that flood zone would be, they would have their water would be drained to the front to the storm drain, and it's right in front of their house. So.
Okay, so it's been there, but do they have flooding in that neighborhood when we have these heavy rains?
They're
Is that
actually
why the
sitting up
city-
pretty high, and where their house is and everything, I can see why the zone, it's been zoned that way. I don't know when the last time they had, a big enough for, and they haven't lived there that long either, but, so, the house itself sits up pretty high.
So
But yet-
would y'all actually have a drain line to the front of the house where the city has a manhole, or looks like a
Yes,
sewage?
sir. Their plan is to put just a flex pipe. Normally, we just have like 2 feet away from the equipment pad. With theirs, they're going to have a flex pipe that just would roll out to the street from there. So it won't be anything permanent. It'll just be when they're using and dispelling water.
And dechlorinated pool water is an allowable discharge for stormwater.
Yeah, again, what she's asking for us today is not what we have on here.
That's exactly. The original staff report is correct. The PowerPoint presentation we created is wrong.
Okay, so it's not 7.7. What's the numbers?
So we're asking for a 7-foot variance
That's correct.
to be only 3 feet from the property line.
That's correct.
That's, okay.
Yeah, on attachment E, it indicates, she has some writing at the very bottom as well, saying 3 feet to be decided to property line, so that's what they're asking for.
That's exactly right. Yes, sir.
And Derek, I do have a question on, now as far as that, the floodplain, I know you indicated the white was the 500-year and the lighter color, the blue was the 100-year?
100-year, that's exactly right.
No structures are allowed permitted in any of those boundaries?
That's correct. Not without, I believe you can be in the 500 year with making special allowances based on federal regulations, but for the most part, no. We don't want structures in the floodplain.
Not even with a variance from the city, or this would be more of a federal issue?
It would be, if it was in the floodplain, if they were proposing it to be in the floodplain, there are things that you can do to make a structure able to be placed in the flood zone. But in this instance, it's not an issue because it won't be in the floodplain.
It's far enough, it won't affect anything as far as what they're building.
That's exactly right.
Even with the 3 inches away from the fence.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. The left or right is not an issue. If it was going south, potentially, but where they're requesting, no, it would not affect the floodplain.
Are there any other questions for the applicant from members of the board? All right, thank you very much, Ms. Reese. Is there anybody else who wishes to be heard either for or against this variance request? All right. There being none, the chair will now entertain a motion from members of the board to either approve or deny the variance request. And as a point of clarification, in this particular variance request, the floodplain has nothing to do with the current variance request. It was merely a marker. And according to what you were talking about, the variance request is what we see on page 5 of your written request. And that is a variance of 7 feet. Is that correct? Okay. So this variance request will be a variance of 7 feet from the side setback requirements for NC 10. Hope that's clear as mud to everybody. The chair will now entertain a motion.
I make motion to approve.
I'm sorry, Ms. Jones? I didn't hear. I'm sorry.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Very well.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That a variance from the terms of the Unified Development Ordinance would not be contrary to the public interest where owing to special conditions, a little enforcement provisions will in an individual case result in unnecessary hardship. The placement of swimming pool in the proposed location will not affect any neighbors nor impact the character of the street due to no adjacent neighbors. The spirit of the Unified Development Ordinance will be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done. The restrictions on the pool locations are in place to prevent noise and other issues that may be detrimental to neighboring lots. Placement of this pool on the street side will meet the intent of the ordinance without infringing on the privacy of a next door neighbor. That there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property, the footprint of the house and carport along with the location of the floodplain limit, the options for placement of the pool where it does not affect the floodplain. That these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. The lots in this neighborhood are generally the same size as are the houses. The footprint of the house and the dominance of the floodplain are unique to the particular property, will be placed and will stay within 7 foot from the side, not affecting the sides. I want to say I got that right. That because of these conditions, the application of Unified Development Ordinance to this particular property would effectively restrict the utilization of property as follows. Adherence to the terms of the ordinance will result in the inability of the owner to add a swimming pool to this property. Therefore, with them following the ordinance that's given today, they will be able to add the swimming pool to their property following the ordinance. That the authorization of a variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by granting the variance. Because the pool is proposed to be behind the house behind a 6-foot-tall privacy fence and on the street side property line along with Stratton Drive. Its impacts on the street and on the neighbors will not be negligible. I think I said it right. That's it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Singley. We have a motion to approve the variance request. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, gentlemen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. The variance request is approved. And just for clarification, that was, let me go back. This is for Elaine. That was Mr. Nolan and Mr. Valerie making the second. Is that correct?
Yes.
Just want to make sure. All right, cool. All right, there being no other items on this evening's agenda, is there anything staff wishes to address?
No, thank you everyone for showing up, and hope y'all have a great night.
Yes, yes, yes. I want to thank the members of the board for being here. I don't know, maybe you bring us good luck. You're welcome to come back next month and see what happens.
Yeah, we got everybody.